Hello. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you all. Good evening and welcome to tonight's special event, Leading the Liberal Way. My name is Karen Littlewood, President of the Ontario Secondary School Teachers Federation, and I'm honored to be one of your co-hosts for the evening. And I want to thank everyone who has joined us tonight, both in person and virtually through live streams, or maybe are watching it afterwards as a recorded version. Tonight's event was made possible by the collaborative efforts of OSSTF FEESO, the Ontario English Catholic Teachers Association, l'Association des Enseignantes et des Enseignants Franco-Ontariens, and News Beyond. I also want to acknowledge that we are on the territories of the Huron-Wendat, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Métis, and the Mississaugas of the First Credit Nation. And when I do a land acknowledgement, I always want to express some gratitude. So over the past weekend, I really enjoyed the beautiful weather, the sun. It continued today, and I took the opportunity to walk outside, to breathe in the air, and to recharge so that I was ready for the week to come. And I hope you all had an opportunity to do that. In considering, though, the Indigenous lands on which we are meeting today, I also did a little bit of research into governance practices of the Anishinaabe and the Huron-Wendat. And they followed processes where it was a totem or a clan or a family that came together to work and to decide different aspects of their community. There might be the Loon or the Crane clan, and they provided leadership. There could be the Bear clan, and they worked on health and serenity, or the Fish clan, who are the mediators and the planners and the thinkers. I think we might have some fish here. We also have the Bird, who are the teachers. That's me, I'm a teacher. But we require the consensus of all in order to come to a decision. So as we talk about potential future leaders of the Liberal Party, I'm hoping that we will consider the 7 teachings of the grandfathers: love, respect, honesty, bravery, truth, wisdom, and humility. Tonight's event comes at a critical time for the Ontario Liberal Party and the province as a whole. There is a leadership vacuum in Ontario right now. The people elected to govern this province are choosing to prioritize profits over people, helping the wealthy few instead of serving the many, and working to secure dodgy, and that's a very gentle adjective, dodgy deals with private companies at the expense of the public good. Emergency rooms are being closed and hospitals are underfunded, while a European mega spa gets $500 billion to subsidize a corporate land grab that nobody asked for, and students are going without necessary supports in the classroom, while developers are securing lucrative backroom deals to sell off public lands. I spent some time today doing some media interviews regarding the People for Education report that they released regarding de-streaming, and how we really want de-streaming to work, but without a government committing to make sure the supports are in place, it seems doomed to fail. And that's not what Ontarians want, and it's not what they asked for. Ontarians have been asked to put up with less than they deserve for far too long. Ontarians deserve better. But if we are ever going to change the status quo and deliver for the people of Ontario, we need to have strong, vibrant opposition parties. We need them to be in power eventually too, that can effectively challenge the Ford government in the next election. And tonight we will be hearing from 4 candidates on how they can revitalize the Ontario Liberal Party and tackle Ontario's most critical challenges. Because rebuilding Ontario will take a leader with real vision on how to restore public trust in our public institutions, on how to secure the kinds of transformative investments that are needed to save our vital public services from years of deliberate underfunding, shortchanging, and underspending. It is my honor to be the president of OSSTF FEESO, and I represent over 60,000 teachers, education workers, working in sites from junior kindergarten to post-secondary, and OSSTF will never stop advocating for a fully funded public education system, the one that Ontario deserves and needs. But in order to make our dream a reality, it will take elected officials, a willing opposition, and the provincial government to consult, share ideas, listen to input, and commit to long-term sustainable investments. We do not have that type of partner right now in the Ford government. We don't even have another adult in the room with them. They're not getting it done, as they like to say. And this means we need to work harder to ensure we have an education-friendly government and opposition. Whomever becomes the next leader of the Ontario Liberal Party has more than just a difficult task in front of them. But despite the very real challenges, I am sure every candidate who will be stepping on this stage shortly tonight views this as an opportunity to build something great, something that will deliver for the people of Ontario. OSSTF FEESO members, along with party members and other union members, are watching this tonight in person and on live stream, and they will be listening intently, paying attention to each candidate's vision for a better tomorrow. I know they're listening back there and they're ready. Because we want very much, we need that better tomorrow. And let me be blunt, we have high expectations for the next leader and for the party. OSSTF FEESO is nonpartisan, and we support all parties that are friendly to public education, to labor, and to serving the best interests of students, their families, and communities across Ontario. We know that through public education, we can ensure a more vibrant, prosperous, and equitable Ontario for future generations. And we expect the next leader of the OLP to have a clear vision for improving public education. We want and deserve better schools and stronger communities. That's my button. As well as significant investments in public services overall. Hallway healthcare is just not cutting it. Neither is the extreme lack of affordable housing and the growing reliance on food banks. We need our opposition leaders and our future leaders to offer us hope that's grounded in the fact that we can do things differently and far better than the current provincial government. It's time to give party members something to be inspired about and excited about and something to vote for as they cast their ballots less than 2 weeks from tonight. And then, in 2026, we need to keep that energy and inspiration building to give Ontario something to believe in, something that gets them on their feet and in the voting booth, excited to have something to vote for rather than just a party to vote against. That is what we want to hear tonight, and I know it's something the candidates can and will deliver. So on behalf of OSSTF FEESO, I want to thank all the candidates for entering this race, for sharing your visions with us and participating in the event tonight. I also have some words shared with me by my colleague and event partner Anne Vinéois, présidente de l'Association des Enseignants Franco-Ontariens, who wasn't able to join us tonight. Le AEFO représente plus de 12 000 membres, des enseignantes et des enseignants, ainsi que des divers groupes d'employés et employés travaillant dans les écoles de langue française et dans des divers établissements francophones partout en Ontario. Opportunities like today's are important to share our vision for the future of our province. Mais je vous rappelle que nous ne pouvons pas bâtir un Ontario plus fort et plus prospère sans reconnaître, valoriser et appuyer l'ensemble des communautés qui la forment, telles que les quelques 800 000 Franco-Ontariennes et Franco-Ontariens. Yes, there are nearly 800,000 Franco-Ontarians who contribute to the growth of our province every day. Nous avons besoin plus que jamais de meilleur financement en éducation et particulièrement pour le système d'éducation en langue française. We have over 500 French language schools across the province. Franco-Ontarian students are entitled to the same resources and services as the English-speaking majority. Nous revendiquons la valorisation des professions en éducation et des conditions de travail qui soient à la hauteur du travail important qu'elles et qu'ils font jour après jour auprès de notre jeunesse, notre avenir. C'est par la force collective que l'on réussira à faire avancer les causes sociales pour bâtir une société plus juste, plus équitable, plus diversifiée et qu'on réussira à assurer la pérennité et l'essor de nos systèmes d'éducation en langue française financés par les fonds publics. And I'm asking you today to ensure that the voice of Ontario's francophones is heard in your discussions et surtout que les Franco-Ontariennes et les Franco-Ontariens aient leur juste place, que leurs droits soient respectés et valorisés dans cette vision d'avenir pour notre province. Bonne discussion. And now, I invite my colleague, Ontario English Catholic Teacher Association President Renee Jansen-Indewall, to the podium to offer his remarks and to formally introduce our moderator and candidates. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Renee Jansen-Indewall, and I'm the president of the Ontario English Catholic Teachers, and a proud co-host of this event along with OSSTF and AEFO. Welcome to Leading the Liberal Way, a fireside chat with the 4 Ontario Liberal leadership candidates. As we enter the final stretch before party members from across the province cast their ballots on November 25th and 26th and elect the new Ontario Liberal Party leader. I know everyone is eager to get to this evening's main event, but I want to take a moment to talk briefly about the importance of these kinds of conversations and what's at stake for Ontario. As we move forward to the next provincial election, these are issues that should be on our mind. And I think that publicly funded education provides a window, one example, into the devastation that the Ford Conservative governments have caused. The provincial government inherited a world-class education system only 5 years ago, thanks in large part to the policies and efforts of the previous Liberal government. And since then, the Ford Conservative government has systematically undermined and underfunded education. They have made drastic cuts, canceled vital resources and supports that students rely on, and they have disrespected teachers and education workers every step of the way. They're doing their best to strain publicly funded education to a breaking point and to open a path to privatization so that they can help their rich buddies. They have repeated this pattern across the province, from healthcare to housing. And one way or another, we have all felt the consequences of a government who has put privatization over public service and profit over people. I know many of us hope that in 2026, Ontario will elect a government that thinks being for the people is more than just a slogan or a bumper sticker. The work to make this a reality is already underway. It's underway through the advocacy efforts of individuals and associations like OECTA, OSSTF, and AEFO, and in OECTA's case, our No More campaign. And I invite people to go to the site nomore.ca, which is KNOWMOR.ca, and join our campaign to stand up for publicly funded education. And it's also underway through the Ontario Liberal Party, their leadership contest, which in comparison with the Ford Conservative government has actually focused on what it means to govern. This has been a forum for ideas and policies for how Ontario can move forward and to lay a foundation for the next chapter of the Ontario Liberal Party. I'm excited to hear the leadership candidates this evening and their visions for revitalizing the party and tackling the province's most critical challenges through restoring public trust and transformative investment in education and all of our vital public services. So without further ado, I'd like to mention, they'll be properly introduced after, but I'd like to mention the 4 panelists in tonight's debate in alphabetical order. Bonnie Crombie, the Mayor of Mississauga. Nathaniel Erskine-Smith, Member of Parliament for Beaches, East York. Ted Hsu, Member of Parliament for Kingston and the Islands. And Yasir Naqvi, Member of Parliament for Ottawa Centre. Finally, it is my pleasure to turn things over to Ahmad Elbayoumi, an accomplished journalist and writer for Polly Corner and News Beyond, who will be the moderator for this evening. Thank you all very much for coming, and it's over to you, Ahmad.
Do I turn it on? Oh, there. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Ahmad Elbayoumi. I'm a journalist. I cover Ontario politics and policy out of Queen's Park. I'm also the author of Poly Corner. It's a newsletter that covers basically everything out inside the Pink Palace, read by a growing community of Queen's Park insiders. Now, the mission of the newsletter is simple. We want to be the lively, essential reading to better understand Queen's Park. Team Ford's policymaking, Team Styles is pouncing, Team Fraser's plotting for a great comeback. And this event is exactly what we are trying to bring, the spirit of the newsletter, bringing it here live at the Isabelle Bader Theatre. Over the past few months, the formerly five, and Adil Shamji is in our crowd tonight, the four Liberal leadership candidates have been talking about their visions for the party, but it is bigger than that. It is about rebuilding a political party and governing a province after two humiliating, dare I say, very humiliating defeats in the last two elections. And so over the next 90 minutes, our mission is very clear. This is not your average confrontational elbows-up debate. There's been 6. I've heard from a lot of Liberals, they're tired of them. What we're trying to do here is this is really going to be a conversation about the policies and about the leadership ideas that they are putting forward. Because at the end of the day, leadership contests are about ideas. So the candidates know the format, the candidates know the rules. The rules are simple. There will not be any opening or closing statements. There will be no timing. It is going to be a conversation, a candid conversation. As it was put, no fluff, just honest conversation. And that is going to be my job over the next 90 minutes to play debate cop. I am going to interrupt the candidates when I feel that they are scripted and giving talking points, and I'm going to try to really refocus the conversation about the issues that really matter to folks in this province. This event is hosted by the Ontario Secondary School Teachers Federation, the Ontario English Catholic Teachers Association, and l'Association des Enseignantes et des Enseignants Franco-Ontariens. Now, again, the ground rules, no opening closing statements, no timing. It's really going to be a candid and open conversation. We want to give these candidates a chance to articulate their thoughts, give nuanced opinions, and have a nuanced conversation about these ideas. Now, let me introduce the candidates. I'm going to give the bios of each candidate, and then we will introduce them on stage. Bonnie Crombie is the mayor of Mississauga. Previously a public affairs consultant, she served as a city councillor and a federal parliamentarian. Crombie holds a Bachelor's of Arts in Political Science and International Relations from the University of Toronto and a Master of Business Administration from the Strelick School of Business. Yeah. He'll be right here.
Oh, you're there. Sorry, just about to take his seat.
That's fine.
There we go.
Nate Erskine-Smith is the MP for Beaches East York. Prior to entering politics, he worked in commercial litigation at a law firm in Toronto. Erskine-Smith attended Queen's University for a Bachelor's of Arts and holds a Bachelor's of Civil Law from Oxford University. Please welcome Nate Erskine-Smith. Yasir Naqvi is the MP for Ottawa Centre, an international trade lawyer. He previously served as the former Liberal Party president and the province's Attorney General. Naqvi attended McMaster University, where he earned a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and a Bachelor of Science in Life Science before finishing his Master's in Political Science at Carleton and attending the University of Ottawa's Law School. Please welcome Yasir Naqvi. Oh, I think I forgot someone. Ted Hsu is the MPP for Kingston and the Island, a physicist who worked in Chalk River and Vancouver. Hsu jumped into the world of business before entering politics, serving as treasurer for his local riding association before winning his federal seat. He has a Bachelor's of Sciences from Queen's University and a PhD in physics from Princeton University. Please welcome Ted Hsu. Well, thank you for joining us. How's everyone doing?
Great.
Great.
It's our favorite thing, coming to debates.
So this conversation is going to be a fireside conversation, and I'm going to try to bring some fire to it, hopefully. The questions that we've chosen are around 3 topics, 3 specific themes: rebuilding the party, investing in public services, and restoring trust in government and in politics, breaking that cynicism that people have nowadays. And so I'm going to start off with the most basic question, and this is no indication of any future questions that are coming. But you're applying for a very serious job. The Ontario Liberal Party leadership and then the Premier, being Premier of this province. And folks I've been talking to over the past few months say that this is the worst job in Ontario politics. You're leading a party without financial resources, with no official party status. It's very severely diminished. And so I'm gonna ask, why do you want this job? And Bonnie, you can start us off.
I want this job because our province is on the wrong path. The path that the Ford government has taken us on is harmful and it's dangerous. And they're there to enrich their already very rich friends, not all of us. They're not here for us. They're not here for average Ontarians. And so I thought that someone with my experience, given that I've been in politics now 15 years and run a government today, a $4 billion organization, the fact that I have a lot of name recognition across the province, and the fact that I've had a 20-year business career first, I thought I brought the right experience to the table. Now, I will say I have great fellow candidates who all bring great experience to the table in their own way, and in less than 2 weeks, people are faced with that choice on who do you select to go up against Doug Ford. So I'm in this because I want to return to affordability. I want our young people to be able to buy a house again and afford the rent of their apartment. I want to steer us back to universal single-payer medicine, not private medicine. I want a modeled education system, a public education system that we invest in, that will serve our youth and prepare them for success in the future. And of course, I want to protect our land, not only the green belt, sensitive land, lowland, farmland in particular. I want to acknowledge that climate change is real and that we need to be prepared.
Okay.
Thank you.
We're trying to move here fast because we have a lot of questions to talk about and a lot of topics to talk about. Nate.
I mean, find me a bigger difference. So we have right now a Liberal Party in Ontario that is in third place. We face a really frustrating Conservative majority government, and I don't see the values I want to see at Queen's Park. I don't see the competence, the compassion, and the integrity, the most important value in politics. I certainly don't see the seriousness when it comes to the challenges and the ideas we need to see in our politics, whether it is around defending and protecting public services in healthcare and education, whether it's making sure that young people see a future in Ontario because they can afford to live here, and addressing the housing crisis, and making sure we have serious ambition around tackling the climate crisis. And so we need values, we need serious ideas, and then I know it's going to take a relentless amount of hard work, but there's a real opportunity to rebuild our politics and our party the way we want it to be, and to bring the same grassroots and generational renewal to the provincial party that I was part of bringing to the federal party 10 years ago. And 10 years ago, I left law for politics because that's where I can make the biggest difference. I think there's no question in my mind, it's at the provincial level, rebuilding our party, to rebuild our province. That's where I can make the biggest difference.
Thank you. Ted.
We face as a society simultaneous crises in affordability, housing, our healthcare system, education system. The economy is missing critical staff and skills in our labor force. We're facing climate change, and our young people are inheriting much larger government debt than we've had before, so options are limited. How do we solve all of these things? A couple of things I really believe in. I believe that liberalism is the way to approach these problems. It starts with rewarding individual effort, but also asking ourselves, what is our responsibility towards each other? We also believe that we want to change things. We want to change things to make them better, but I think what the liberal way of doing things is we want to be humble as well. We want to say, let's check, make sure we're right, let's ask some people. Let's measure twice and cut once. It's a liberal way of doing things that I really believe in, and that's why I want to run for the leader of the Liberal Party. But let me go further. You need to unite the Liberal Party, and I think I'm the one who can do that. The Liberal Party is at its best when it's trying to bridge different parts of our society. The Federal Liberal Party had a lot of success in the 20th century, bridging that divide between French and English Canada. And we face so many polarizing things in our society today, whether it's between rich and poor, left and right, urban and rural, old and young. The Liberal Party is the one that can bridge all of these divides, and I have connections between all of these groups. I have the experience of unifying the Liberal Party and then drawing other people to the Liberal Party in order to win elections. That's my ability. That's my proven ability.
I'm going to jump in here.
Yes.
So you talk about unifying the party. How do you do that? And very quickly, like what are the steps to unify a party that has been broken for the past 5 years?
I think part of it is to keep in touch with all the different parts of the party. We're scattered in different regions of Ontario. We have different backgrounds, ethnic, cultural backgrounds. We speak different languages. We work in different fields. And so it's keeping in touch with different parts of the party and finding that common interest and the common way of doing things, like thinking through problems.
Okay, I'm going to move to Yasir. Yasir, former Attorney General, former Minister of Labour, federal MP. Why do you want this job?
So first of all, Ahmad, thank you for organizing this conversation. Thank you for streaming this because my kids, Rafi and Ellie, are watching, so I just got to do this to them because I know they'll be surprised that I did that. Listen, I don't think any one of us got into politics to be comfortable. We're in politics because we want to make a difference, and that's about doing the hard things. For me, building a party, as much as it's a challenging task, but it's a really necessary responsibility, because Ontario needs a strong Liberal Party to ensure that we are coming with Liberal ideas forward when it comes to healthcare and education. And one of the biggest reasons that I decided to run in this leadership race is because I want to unleash the potential of Ontarians. Our greatest natural resource in this province is our human resource, is the people who choose to make Ontario their home, just like how my family did some 35 years ago. And we have a tremendous opportunity and responsibility to ensure that the newcomers who come into Ontario, the family that just landed 6 months ago at Toronto Pearson Airport to build their lives, or the young people who are just finishing their education and going to be building their lives, that they have the opportunities available to them to build successful lives. And I think today, under Doug Ford, we're failing them. We're really leaving them behind, and that's why you need a strong Ontario Liberal Party who will ensure that we are investing in our people and giving them an opportunity to be successful.
Okay, I'm going to move this conversation and take you guys a bit back. So the last election, the year started off with awful polling numbers for the Conservatives, and yet the Premier was popular, and you can attribute the pandemic to that. He came out of that election with a supermajority, more seats than he had won in 2018, despite some unpopular decisions at the time. This party, didn't even get official party status. And so I wonder, why do you think the party, failed to do so well? Was it a disconnect with policy? Was it a disconnect with leadership? Or was it that the Premier Ford was just too popular?
He wasn't popular. He got elected with 17% of the vote. Problem with Liberals, some of us were disillusioned, and for the past 2 elections, you all stayed home. Some of you were pragmatic and voted for another party to stop Doug Ford. Nonetheless, I don't think he's as popular as you think. People didn't vote in droves for Doug Ford. What they did vote was us out of office the last time. They wanted us to sit on the bench for 4 years, but I'm seeing a spark. We all have been traveling right across the province, and we're seeing it. It's really happening. We're connecting with voters. We're connecting with Liberals. We've reinvigorated our brand. People are excited to be a Liberal again. They're proud to say they're Liberal again. I was told when I got in the race, expect 4 or 5 people in a room, and there are dozens and sometimes hundreds that want to talk about rebuilding our party and how we can win in 2026.
Okay, so you say that the party was voted out in 2018. The reason Doug Ford won was that the Liberals were unpopular at the time. Yasir, maybe you can take this. Then what happened in 2022?
I think there's 2 things happened in 2022. Number one, the pandemic. Nobody had a playbook to how to build a party in a time frame when you can't even engage with people face to face, right? You cannot travel. And that's something that happened, and you can't stop that, you can't prevent that, but made it, of course, very difficult for our previous leader and the party to build this out. But the second thing, which was under our control, and we failed at that, is I think we failed to relate to people. We had a big platform, but the platform did not speak to the issues that people were facing. And I think, I was helping my local Liberal candidates in Ottawa, and I was having a difficult time presenting a narrative, presenting a frame as to why we're in this. And that's why one of the things that I'm talking about, that our new leader has to really champion practical Liberal ideas around healthcare, around education, around affordability, because those are the three big issues that people are concerned with. And unless and until we give practical ideas to solve those issues, we will not be able to engage people in a meaningful way and give them a reason to come out and vote for us.
So Ted, Yasir is talking about folks not really engaging with the party. You ran as a candidate. Can you tell us what you were hearing from folks?
What I found was that the overall campaign in the province, I think that the leader should have been meeting people face-to-face more. When the leader came through my riding, it was a lot of small gatherings, and we could have done outdoor meetings with 100 or 200 people, not worried about the background, what the photo op looked like, just meet a lot of people. That's something we didn't do. And we also needed a message that was clear, memorable, and repeatable. I often tell the story, my daughter, she was in grade 6, had to do a project covering all the parties, and I asked her several months later, well, what do you remember about the Conservatives? And she remembered, get it done. And I said, what do you remember about what the Liberals wanted to do? And she said, I don't remember. So we need, in addition to a good platform, which Liberals are good at doing, much better than the other parties, to have messaging that is clear, memorable, and repeatable.
Nate, you often talk about the Not Doug Ford Party being the Not Doug Ford Party, and you say that it doesn't work. Do you think it didn't work in the last election? Would you attribute that?
Yeah, there's no question. So knocking on doors in the last election, you should know, by the way, we flipped 2 ridings in the last election. Ted's was one, Beaches East York was the other. And partly there was a commitment to strong local representation. Ted represented that, and Mary Margaret McMahon and Beaches East York certainly represented that. And we were, though, it was a bizarre election night because you're celebratory for a moment in time. We'd encouraged Mary Margaret to run, we'd support her, great candidate, and great MPP, and then it was a disaster across the province, and Mary Margaret was like, what have I gotten into? And in the end, we were the Not Doug Ford Party. The choice is yours. But the thing is, in Ontario, there are 3 Not Doug Ford parties, and you can't just, there are many reasons to vote against Doug Ford, many reasons. Lack of competence around healthcare and housing, lack of compassion towards people on ODSP, lack of integrity, the Greenbelt, you run down the list. We have to give people a reason to vote for us. In the last election, the pandemic was part of it. Doug Ford wasn't a Republican governor, he wasn't Jason Kenney, and a lot of people at doors were, he wasn't as bad as I thought he was going to be. Now, I think they have a different view of that today in many respects, but we have to give people a positive reason to get out and vote for us. We have to be seen to be, and to be, the serious, credible, and progressive alternative. And I'll leave you with this. In the 2018 election, there were 42 ridings where the NDP and Liberals combined for 60% of the vote. Not to say we won all those ridings, but progressives still voted to a significant degree. In the last election, the 42 ridings down to 21 ridings. Progressive voters stayed home. We need to give them a reason to get out and vote and to see us as the vehicle to make a difference.
Progressive voters stayed home. Bonnie, you touched on that at the start. Why?
What I want to say as well is that I think in 2022 and 2018, we tried to be all things to all people. We tried to do too much. The platform was too fulsome. We really need to streamline that. Because I am a mayor, I tend to be very practical, and I can't run a deficit. I actually have no deficit in the city of Mississauga. I know the money that I'm going to raise, and I attack the most pressing priorities. And I think that's the approach we should embrace. We should tackle the most pressing priorities, the affordability, our public healthcare system, our public education system, and invest in those. And of course, bring integrity back to protecting climate change in our Greenbelt. And I will say, to our leader's credit, he was a great leader with great ideas, but not very well known, probably because of COVID. And we didn't go out on the road and didn't meet people in big rallies. So I think he had that going against him as well.
Ted, let me bring you in. What do you think?
What I wanted to say is if in really tough elections, you have to have candidates that are well connected with the communities they represent. And we nominated candidates way too late. Nate said that Mary Margaret and we were the 2 Liberal MPPs who got elected, and we flipped the riding from NDP to Liberal. Well, both of us had over a year to go and knock on doors. I got to every street and road in my riding. Many, many Liberal candidates were nominated at the last minute. So there's an internal party organization that we don't want to get into tonight that is important as well. Would have made the difference for official party status.
Let me press you on that, though. You're talking about candidates. The party and from a media perspective, they were always putting out these star candidates. There's a star candidate running in this riding, a star candidate in that riding. Would it not, if these were star candidates, would that not have made a difference?
I think that star candidate is a lazy way of getting good candidates who know their communities and will advocate for their communities. There's no substitute for taking the time and meeting as many people and really connecting with the people in the riding so that they know that you know them and you are for them and you will take their concerns to Queen's Park and argue and complain until things get done.
Yes, sir.
So politics hasn't changed in 100 years, by the way. It's all about people. It is about local organization. And unless and until you do the hard work, the fundamental hustle that is necessary, the work that 4 of us, 5 of us, when Adil was part of the effort, has done in terms of signing up people, in getting riding associations organized again, that work is extremely important because that work then allows you for local volunteers to come together, build a community, able to find somebody who is a candidate of local profile. I've always argued you don't need high-profile candidates, you need local profile candidates because it's that local community that's going to elect someone and send them as their local Liberal member of provincial parliament. That work has not been done in some time, right? And that is the work that needs to happen. And I think this leadership race, the competitive nature of this leadership race, the work that all of us have done collectively really sets the foundation. And our next leader's #1 job, along with all of us, is going to then build on that foundation, make sure that our riding associations are strong. We create that sense of purpose, the sense of community, the sense of belonging that's needed so that we can find candidates that resonate with those communities and knock on doors and defeat Doug Ford in 2026.
So it brings me into the next question. How do you rebuild a broken political party? Like, how do you be competitive again? The Liberal Party was a powerhouse in this province. How do you make it a powerhouse again?
We're doing that work. We're doing that work. We're the largest political party in Ontario right now, probably 3rd or 4th largest in the country. We've got over 100,000 members, and that's why harnessing that energy is going to be key in building that political organization that is based in local communities, not in some office here downtown Toronto.
Nate?
Honestly, politics is about relationships, and we have to have an active presence in every community across this province. And we're not going to win 124 ridings in the next election, I know that. But every community deserves a strong voice in the party that we build. And so whether or not it is a downtown Toronto riding, whether it's Sarnia-Lambton, whether it's Sault Ste. Marie, there are ridings that we are going to win, there's no question about it, in the next election. But when we come to rebuild the party, it's not all about winnability in the short term. It's about rebuilding engagement and a presence for our party everywhere.
So can the party win in the next election?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, of course.
Absolutely.
Of course.
Okay.
Of course.
And Bonnie, I heard an O there. Yeah.
Every riding is winnable, and we are going to win in 2026. I'm sorry. It takes a presence on the ground. We have to be present. We have to be listening. We have to meet with local people. We have to nominate the right people, local community, respected individuals, business leaders, et cetera, but we can win. But there's a question of resources in the last time. We don't allocate resources to only the most winnable ridings. We build up a war chest, and we make sure that every riding is sufficiently funded so that we can win. Money isn't comfortable. We have to raise it. We've been outgunned 10-1, and we have to spend a lot of our time building back at the riding level and raising money to be competitive in the next race.
Well, we don't have to compete with the Conservatives dollar for dollar with in campaigns. Well, you know why? Because I know from campaigns, Conservatives spend a lot of money so they can have campaign workers. Liberals don't need to, because I motivate people. We haven't even paid a campaign manager in Kingston and the Islands ever. Why? Because we always have good volunteers. You don't need to win elections by having more money than the other party.
Yeah.
But what resources we need is local volunteers. We need to get real Ontarians excited about the Ontario Liberal Party. We need to get Liberals to get excited about Ontario Liberal parties. Guess what? The Conservatives are going to make the same mistake. They're going to rely on paid staffers to go out in ridings. And what we need to do is engage our party base. They're getting excited about the prospect for the future, but we have to give them a reason and work with them. And it's that local work that is absolutely essential that has to be done in order for us to be successful.
The war chest doesn't come first. It's the spirit that comes first. The fire in the belly, that comes first. Money will come later.
I have fire in my belly. I think you do too, Ted. I
Yes,
think it's going to happen.
I do. I'm just saying that, don't focus on the money. Focus on the spirit that animates this party and brings us together and makes us want to fight for things.
Well, up until now, we didn't have 100,000 members. We did the same thing the Conservatives were doing. We relied on paid staff members to come and do the groundwork. We can't do that. We need to build an army of people at the ground level. And yes, we need to be competitive with dollars too. It's very important to win.
So in essence, there's a lot of bellies with fire here. But what I'm gonna ask is, the party, the fire in the party's belly has been gone for a few years. And I wonder, when you were trying to rebuild a party, what, Nate, do you think is more important? Is it more important to propose or to oppose?
Look, there are three parties that are opposing actions at Queen's Park, and rightly so. There are many things that we ought to oppose, and we should want better from our provincial government. And the message we have to deliver is, if you want better, the answer is participation. Politics has faults. Everyone who's been involved in politics knows there are faults to politics. It's also the most important way we make a difference in the lives of those around us. And we need to take a very positive message about engagement and involvement and show people that not only is politics the vehicle for change, but the Ontario Liberal Party is the best vehicle for change. And that's how we are not going to just raise big dollars from big donors. We are going to have grassroots donors that are going to contribute to our campaign and want to build something with us. We're going to restore volunteerism in every corner of this province, and we're going to ensure that every community has a strong voice in this party. It's not just about showing up once, showing up twice. It's about making sure that every community, every volunteer, has a real voice in shaping our politics.
Okay. I'm going to steer this conversation south a bit to talk about ideology. There's been a lot of conversation about ideology in this race. One of the things we'd frequently hear from previous Liberal voters who did not vote for the party in the last election was that the party maybe veered too much to the left from the political center that it once was. And so I'm going to ask you all, and Bonnie, I'm going to start with you because this is irrelevant here. Where does the party need to be ideologically to win the next election?
The party's a big tent. We need to attract everyone from all angles of the spectrum, right, left, center, exactly. I don't say that we were too left-wing. What I will say is that we were trying to fund programs that were better delivered by the federal government. And I still maintain that. And I still maintain that we were trying to be all things to all people, and we can't do that. We're better to streamline our platform, speak to 2 or 3 things. I hate giving this example, but everyone will remember the uncommon revolution, uncommon sense revolution, which was anything but common sense. But what you can credit Mike Harris with is, we're going to do 3 things as a government. We're going to do these 3 things. And those were the 3 things they did. Like him or not, people say, I didn't like him, but he did the 3 things he was going to do. I think we need to be more streamlined. And yes, most Ontarians are centrists. Like our party, we are a big tent. We welcome everyone.
Let me press you there. You talk a lot about bringing that pragmatic approach that you brought to the mayor's office here at Queen's Park. Does that work? Does that work at the provincial level, though?
It works. It certainly works at City Hall. It's who I am. I get elected with increasingly larger majorities, so from 63 to 74 to 78%. It'll work at the province as well. I think we have to decide who we are, what are the problems we want to solve, what are the most pressing problems we want to solve, and address those. Let people know who we are and what we stand for. For instance, what's the ballot question? Is it about affordability? Will it be about integrity and trust and confidence? It'll be a mixture of those things, and those are the items that we will need to address in our platform head on for the electorate.
Let me, Nate, you can go on this. Where does the party need to be ideologically to win the next election?
So there's no question we need to represent a strong economic agenda, and you don't get lasting social progress unless it's built on a fiscally sustainable footing. But again, there are 3 not Doug Ford parties in the province of Ontario. You are not going to earn the trust of progressive voters in this province. If we poll at 24% and the NDP poll at 24% and the Greens poll at 8%, congratulations, Mr. Ford, on another re-election, okay? In order for us to win, in order for us to make the change that I know we can make, it's about ambitious and serious ideas, progressive ideas on building housing, getting housing built, especially for young people, making sure that we deliver strong climate action, making sure that we defend public education, and we invest and support public education, invest and support public health care. There are investments we have to make sure that we are advancing a progressive, principled, and pragmatic direction for this province.
Does the party has been known to be a more centrist party. Does the party have to veer more, like left from the center to be that progressive party it was? No. No?
No.
What is left or right about getting housing built? What is left or right about serious climate action that's not only going to protect the planet for my 7-year-old and my 3-year-old, but also lower energy bills at the same time and attract global investment and create jobs? I mean, you go to small town, rural Ontario or Northern Ontario, what do they want? They want access to family doctors and primary care physicians and nurse practitioners. They want their hospital room, or their ER rooms to stay open. Right. I mean, we can advance a really progressive direction and address challenges in people's lives. But I'll tell you this, right-of-center governments in my lifetime have been marked by a lack of ambition, a lack of seriousness. And you talk about Mike Harris. Mike Harris is in many ways the reason I'm in politics. My parents were teachers, and I was on the I was on the picket line with my parents in the Harris years. And we need to be so much better than that utter lack of ambition. And especially when you look at Doug Ford, what is the Doug Ford government marked by? Short-term decisions in their own electoral interest and to benefit their friends. And we need to represent a party that is going to deliver in the long-term public interest for this province.
I'm going to cut you there. Yasir, same question to you. Where do you stand ideologically?
So the reason I'm a Liberal is because Liberal parties always stood up for practical problem solving to complex problems, based on evidence, based on data. That's where our strong suit lies. I don't think in terms of left or right. I don't think most Ontarians think in terms of left or right. What they want out of their politicians, out of their government, are practical solutions that will make their life easier to live. What I don't want to do, which I'm never comfortable with as a politician, is tell people how should they be living their lives. That's not our job, to tell them how people should live their lives. Our job is to make their life easier to live, and that's why we need to look at practical solutions. That's why I continue to talk about what we need to do in the next election is to take the 3 or 4 big issues that people are facing. Anybody who's knocked on doors will know that people talk about how they can get access to a family doctor or a nurse anymore, or their local emergency room is no longer open on the weekends. Mm-hmm. What is the practical solution to keep those open? How do we get family doctors and nurses in rural Ontario or Northern Ontario? That's the solution. Same thing with overcrowded classrooms or a child with special needs who cannot have access to special educators. These are the kind of solutions that people are looking for, and a Liberal Party will do well with a leader who will champion those practical ideas that will make people's lives easier to live.
Let me bring Ted in.
So I'm known as a problem solver, and I'm also known in my community as somebody who's not particularly ideological. I like to solve problems. I like to be practical, as Yasir says. And as Nate says, people can't afford the rent increase next month. They don't care if the solution comes from the right or the left. They're worried about where they're going to live. I think that this notion of right or left is a shorthand for what you can trust or not trust that politician is going to do. I don't want to use that shorthand. I want people to trust that we will take their problems seriously and do the things that need to be done. Do what's right, even if it's hard to do. Mm-hmm. And so I think what we need to do is earn trust, because we're not going to earn trust by being, that right-wing person or that left-wing person. When you're a Liberal in the middle, you can't earn trust with those labels. You have to earn trust a different way by having people believe that you will think through problems, consult people with experience, consult experts, think for yourself, think carefully, and make the changes that will help people.
Okay, so we've talked about rebuilding the party. I want to talk about this leadership race. I promised to bring some fire to this, so we're going to try it right here. This is not going to be
fire in the belly?
Yeah, sure. So this is not going to be the type of questions that I've been asking, because last week there was some jolt to this race. And I'm going to do this a bit differently, in which Yasir and Nate, you guys will get the same question. Ted will get a separate question, and Bonnie will get a separate question. Okay, let's try this. So last week, Yasir and Nate, you both announced some sort of agreement, and as described to me by folks as a bromance here that you have. This agreement is basically Yasir's telling supporters, mark Nate as your second choice. Nate's telling supporters to do the same.
Not telling, suggesting.
Suggesting.
We don't tell
sure,
people.
Sure, suggesting supporters
we don't
to do
whip
the same.
votes in my,
Yeah.
in my
Now,
office.
now, liberals I talked to, and you may not like this, but liberals I've been talking to say this is basically an admission that no one, first of all, could win on first ballot, but also that
Which is
That's
true.
called stating the
No-
fact.
but
no-
also,
no one can win on the first ballot.
But
That's
also,
correct.
but also that
Depends on turnout.
an admission that there could be a new leader in Bonnie Crombie. So I'm going to ask you simply this question: if your announcement was an indication that the party is on the verge of a Bonnie Crombie victory, can you tell folks why there should not be a Bonnie Crombie victory? Why? Can you speak to that? And I'll bring you in soon. Can you speak to that? Because
Maybe we should keep it positive.
no. Fair enough.
That's who we are.
I'm
We're liberals.
interested.
We're caring. We're compassionate.
Fair
We're
enough.
positive.
I'm interested.
We care about people, even Bonnie Crombie.
I'm interested in the strategy. Can you talk a bit more about that strategy, Nate?
Sure. Look,
Yeah.
I'll say this. This was cast as, of course, it was by certain reporters as against something. Far from it. 10 years ago, I was a 29-year-old starting to run in a nomination locally, and it ended up being there were 3 of us on the road for a very long time, and someone came in closer to the end, and I had earned the trust of, and they'd earned the trust of me, the 2 other candidates in the race, and if you've watched my parliamentary career for 8 years, I've worked across party lines to get things done. Collaboration is a very important thing in politics, and so 10 years ago, that meant collaborating with 2 other people I hoped to win, I worked to win, and we ultimately won in part because of that collaboration. And so fast forward to today, and there have been 4 of us, used to be 5 of us on the road for a long time. I've come to get to know Yasir and trust him, and get back to that direction of the party. You ask about right of center, left of center. When Mayor Crombie launched her campaign, she said that governing from the right of center is the secret sauce. That is not my politics. And I respect, if people want to elect that's up to them. That's absolutely fair. And it is what it is. We are a Big Ten. That's not the direction I want for the party. And when I've been on the road with Yasir has stood on stage and said, we want principled leadership to challenge the status quo. That is politics that I've tried to live for the last 8 years as a member of parliament. And there's an agreement, and I think more than anything, an agreement on the direction we want for our party. And so I certainly said to my supporters, I hope to earn your first ballot support and continue to do so. I'm going to work as hard as I can to win, and I think we got a very good chance of winning. But if it's not me, I think Yasir would be an excellent second choice.
Yasir, same question to you. Can you speak to that strategy of suggesting to folks that Nate be their second choice?
The strategy is a strange word. I mean, I think we've been very transparent and demonstrating collaboration, which is, I think, a rare commodity in politics, and people want transparency out of their politicians. They want to see more collaboration. When Nate and I came to an understanding in terms of the direction we want our party to go, the kind of amount of hard work and hustle that is needed to revitalize a party, when we could see agreement on how do we bring back ethics and accountability in Ontario government, which is sorely lacking, and I think all of us agree on this stage that next election will be fought on trust and ethics, and it's important that we can demonstrate that in our next leader. And lastly, what are the liberal values that surrounds around things like healthcare and education and fighting climate change? Then I got really comfortable as to who I can mark as my second choice, right? And part of it is we want to encourage people to use their ranked ballot. If you accept the fact that nobody's winning this on the first ballot, then the ranked ballot will really matter. And we want, and I think all of us will attest to this, there is very low awareness about ranked ballot among party membership as we are having these conversations. And I think it's important for them to know, and people asked me who I would be marking as their, as my second choice, and I'm now sharing that I'm going to be marking Nate. And I think we've been quite transparent about that and the reasons behind it.
So you'd say that this is not a move against somebody, but more for, a specific vision that you guys share?
It's a move towards the direction of the party that we want to take. And that's why we quite openly, in a transparent fashion, has outlined the 3 areas that we have found common ground, which for us is really important for the future of our party.
Okay, let me bring Ted in, because Ted, you tweeted saying you were invited to join this arrangement, you declined because it does not represent the fresh start that you speak of. Can you speak more about that?
Yeah, so in the last annual general meeting of the party, we brought in this one member, one vote system, which I really like because every member gets a chance to scrutinize all of the leadership candidates on their own, and they get to rank the candidates instead of just voting for delegates who go to a convention and vote in the different rounds of voting. And so what I want people to do is, I certainly want everybody to mark as many choices as they can, but I want people to scrutinize all the candidates. And I don't want to set up something where I'm recommending that they vote for one person and not for the other. Like, look, you've just got this right to vote for leader and rank all the candidates and scrutinize them and pick the best one. So do it. I think that's the fresh start that we need. It's like a fresh approach to doing things.
Okay, let me bring Bonnie here, but I'm going to ask you this question in a bit of a different way. So you spoke about, that big liberal tent and bringing folks in. There's, from the outskirts, folks have, an outsider looking into this race would say that it's been, divisive, somewhat nasty. And you can disagree with that characterization. But my question here would be, when you have an arrangement like that, does it make it more difficult for you, should you be leader, to bring folks into that big tent that you speak of?
The people will decide. I've tried to keep this a very positive race. I've not made any negative comments about any of my colleagues. I genuinely like all of them. I genuinely think they bring incredible skill set to the table. And any one of these gentlemen here would be a better leader than Doug Ford. Quite frankly, would be better served. But the people will decide on where they'll put their ballot. And right now, I think we're all invested in getting our vote out, and we want it to be very fulsome. I'm thrilled that it's a one person, one vote. Everyone has a vote. They have an opportunity to rank a ballot, and I think that's very exciting.
So does it pose a challenge?
Let me tell you something. When I ran for mayor, I didn't have a lot of council support. They had supported my opponent, and it didn't matter at the end of the day because people decided, and they elected me with 63% of the vote at that time. People will decide. They're going to decide, who they think can take on Doug Ford and who they think is going to win in 2026. Who brings the skill set they want to the table? They will decide. I'm not going to say a negative word because I know that each one of them is a better leader, a more formidable and more progressive leader that the province needs rather than Doug Ford. So that's where I'm going to leave it. Thank you. And I am not going to be, as I told them before, a soundbite that the Conservatives will use against us.
Okay, I'm going to let Yasir jump in.
Emma, in a healthy democracy, elections are always competitive. All of us have gone through very competitive elections. We've gone through very competitive nominations as well. I think all of us have fought nominations. That is the essence of a good democratic process because that's the vetting process that we all go through. But all of us have also worked with each other for a very long time, and we do get along with each other. And whoever is the leader, I know, at least I know for myself, if I'm not the leader, I will rally behind my leader. I will be shoulder to shoulder with them because more important task is to build a party and defeat Doug Ford in 2026.
Nate, 10 seconds if you want to add anything.
Just endorsements are not new to politics. And when you've got a ranked ballot, I hope people select me first, but I'm happy to endorse other people down ballot. When then Mayor McCallion endorsed Mayor Crombie, endorsements matter. And ranked ballots are nothing new to nominations, and we see this kind of cooperation all the time, and that's a good thing in our politics. We want that kind of cooperation in our politics.
And I wish I was still on this stage right now too and being part of this race, actually. That would have been even better for this race.
Adel is formidable. Adel's
Adel has dropped out and endorsed
Grab a chair, Adel.
Yeah. But that's another good example.
Brings great ideas to the race. No, I just wanted a clarification because former Mayor Hazel McCallion didn't endorse me. She endorsed my policy platform, and that is a distinction. And she did it after the advance polls closed, or hadn't even opened yet, sorry. sorry, it was after the advance, and when we opened the advance pools, I was winning by the same margins I did at the end. Maybe I picked up a little bit of steam, but we already knew, given what we learned in the advance pools. So,
I just mean to say endorsements are
because-
not new to politics, right? So when you've got a ranked ballot, endorsing a second ballot position makes perfect sense.
Point taken. Mr. Hsu.
I'm listening to what has been said here reminds me of nominations. I think that candidate nominations are very important for the party, and the party benefits if they are open, fair, and civil, and often they're not. I can sit here and say that I have not made any deals with anybody about nominations, and I'm hoping that I can hear the same thing from my the fellow candidates.
Okay.
Agreed.
We are going to move on from talking about rebuilding the party and talking about the leadership race to talking about governing the province. And the first issue is education. OSSTF just entered binding interest arbitration with the province. OECTA and AEFO members voted in favor of a strike vote. And it was just a year ago that we went through a very blistering round of negotiations with CUPE. And to remind folks, CUPE threatened to go on strike. They did file the notice that was required, and then the Ford government introduced legislation with the notwithstanding clause to block them from going on strike. They did so anyways, and there was a whole public face-off. The Ontario Liberal Party, though, has not always had the best relation with teachers' unions. So my question will be, how do you approach that relationship? How do you approach, as Premier, how do you approach the relationship with teachers' unions? And maybe we'll start the other way. So Yasir, you can start.
Sure.
Yeah, no, thank you. So first of all, I will never use the notwithstanding clause, ever, in any matter whatsoever. I've been very clear about this because I think that's an abuse of our charter and is abuse of the use of the notwithstanding clause. Secondly, I was around when we brought Bill 115, so let's just talk about that. I was talking to some of my Teacher Federation friends, and I've learned a big lesson from going through that process is that the best deals to be had are always at the bargaining table. And bargaining can be very difficult. I've served as the Minister of Labor. I can tell you, as somebody who's been part of those conversations, at most times, they're not comfortable, as in a competitive race, like what we're going through. But the best results come out of through the bargaining table. And so relationships are really important in that regards, and respecting the bargaining process is also very important in order to get the right results. And if you follow the process, you will get the right results, which both parties will be happy with.
So you're talking about bargaining in the manner that OSSTF went through, in which they bargained until a specific date and then they went into binding interest arbitration. Is that something that you would be interested in as Premier?
But I think that's part of the conversation as well, right? It was an offer that was made to them, and they have chosen, they took that offer. They actually went for a vote, as I understand, to their members, and they said, yes, let's follow that process. OECTA or ETFO or other unions have not done that. So again, that is part of the bargaining process, and you have to respect that process.
Okay, Ted, same question to you.
When the Ford government put forward Bill 28, which used the notwithstanding clause to prevent CUPE education workers from going on strike, we had a lot of pickets. There was demonstrators around my office, very friendly crowd, and I addressed them. And even though it was a very friendly crowd, we were on the same side of the issue, somebody brought up Bill 115. And I think it's important for the next leader to say, we're sorry for Bill 115. We're not going to do that again. I think we have to make that very clear. And that will be the start of building a new relationship. But I think there is, when you negotiate, you have to accept that both sides are going to try to get the best deal for each side. And it's just a respectful process that has to happen. But as Yasir says, it happens over the bargaining table and not by some legislation that skews the bargaining process.
Okay, Nate, same question to you.
Yeah, so what do we want out of a strong public education system? We want what's best for our kids. It's investments inside the classroom, outside the classroom. It also, though, is respect for educators. I will never forget, my dad was a high school teacher in the east end of Toronto at Malvern Collegiate, which I also went to, which didn't always make life entirely easy, but he would say, I love being a teacher inside the classroom, and I hate the politics of being a teacher outside the classroom. And you're not going to attract the best and brightest, and you're not going to make sure teachers and educators feel the support that they should feel. And you're not going to make sure that we get the most out of educators unless you deliver that respect at the bargaining table and outside, outside the bargaining table. And so much of what teachers are asking for is in the interests of the public education system and our kids. And there should be collaboration with our educators to deliver the best for our kids.
So Bonnie, how do you approach the relationships with teachers' unions differently than the Ford government does?
Let me just say, first of all, never, 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 the notwithstanding clause in Bill 28. I will say that we also need to repeal Bill 124 to make everything fair and equitable going forward. Thank you. The collective bargaining process is very important, and I completely stand beside collective bargaining and the right to strike for everyone. Although the teachers' unions have done that in the past, in the most recent past, very rarely, and I think that's a good thing. They've opted to go into interest arbitration instead. So this is a very positive thing. So you need collaboration. You need a level of trust to sit down at the table. There has to be a win-win. They have to feel good about that they're bringing the right package back. It has to be fair, and both sides have to be fair. I think both sides need to feel that they gained something, they gave something, that they gained something, and it's fair for everyone. And the bottom line is creating stability, and it is the right outcome for the students to create stability for them and to set them up for success.
Nate, that relationship with teachers' unions is built on an understanding, and I wonder, what are the characteristics for a high-quality public education system in this province, in your opinion?
Okay, so first, just to Mayor Crombie's point around trust, I think it's absolutely essential, and it starts before any one of us enter the Premier's office, right? Tonight's a good example, but it's about building bridges and building relationships. Now, in terms of what I would like to see in our public education system, it's investments inside the classroom. I was talking earlier with special educators and making sure that we clear the backlog for special education assistance and access to special education, making sure that we are delivering reasonable class sizes and capping class sizes in collaboration with educators. When we do improve the curriculum, it's in collaboration with educators. We need investments outside the classroom, mental health supports, support for extracurriculars, so there's regional equity, and equity depending, it shouldn't matter what kind of wealth there is in a neighborhood to make sure every student has the same opportunities, and making sure we have a healthy school food program. States are able to do it, we should be able to do it here in Ontario. We should be making sure that we also deliver, respect for educators. It's teacher-led professional development, respect at the bargaining table, working to address violence in the school system as against teachers. There are many things that we have to collaborate on, and ultimately then addressing equity and inclusion in the school system in a serious way as well.
Ted, characteristics for a high-quality public education in this province?
I want to add on to what Nate has said, and I agree with the things that he said, but I remember in the last election campaign in 2022, talking to some teachers, and they looked at our platform about our plan for capping class sizes, and they kind of laughed at it, saying this is clearly unrealistic. So I think what we should do in the next platform is I think we need to lower class sizes. I think we need to have more educational assistance. In my policy on my website, I state very clearly, I want to spend new money on this. I want to spend new money on education. I think we have to. But I think whatever we put in our platform has to be realistic. And so that teachers look at it and say, yes, this can be done, and it will help me in the classroom. And parents will say, yes, this will give our kids a better education system. Okay. So it has to be realistic.
Yasir? Same question.
So I think there's few things that we have to agree on. One is to build a robust, publicly funded education system, a public education system. If I have one thing I would like to do is to get private schools out of business, right? That our public schools should be better, should be equal to any private school, and we need to make sure that that's number one. Number two, the reason I'll say this is because our education system is the great equalizer. It allows us to be successful regardless why. I'm sitting here on this stage right now because the 15-year-old Yasir who came to this country some 35 years ago, who hardly spoke any English, went to public school, and those teachers gave me and my sister so much special attention to make sure that we were not left behind. If it was not for those teachers, I would have not been able to live the successful life that I'm living. So you have to invest in classroom. You have to invest in our educators, the support staff, the people who make the system work. It's a human-driven system. And then you harness their desire, which is student excellence. That children, the young people who are in our schools are able to live their full potential. And for me, that has to be an understanding, and that's where the investment, this is not spending money, this is investing in our future.
You speak about driving private schools out of business. How do you do that? Is there a way to fundamentally change the system?
Yeah, so it's interesting you asked this question. So I did this exercise a while ago where I went to 4 or 5 top private schools in Ontario, and I went on their website to see what their business proposition is. Mm-hmm. You know the number one thing they all talk about is class sizes, is teacher to student ratio. That's basically what they're all selling. Well, why can't we not do that in our public schools? Why can we not have 15 kids in kindergarten? Why cannot we have 20 kids in grade 1 to grade 8? Why cannot we have no more than 25 kids from grade 9 to grade 12? That's my dream. That's what I put down in my platform. That's an investment in making, and we do that by working with our unions.
I'm going to take it to Bonnie. So the same question about characteristics.
So I believe we need to have a very strong public, separate, and French education system. Let's speak to everyone, and there are some parts of our province that have 4 boards, not 2 boards or 3 boards. And I think we have to address a number of issues, and my colleagues have done a good job of that. This teacher shortage, there was a time where we had many people wanting to be a teacher, and today we need to incentivize more teachers, and whether it's a 1-year training program rather than 2 for a period of time, whatever it might be to attract and then retain them as well in the system. We need more teachers, and we need more French language teachers as well. We need to look at class sizes. We've all said that. I think we all agree there that we need, not only on average across the board, but in every single classroom. We know that our kids can't learn when there's 35 kids in a classroom. We need to look at the curriculum. I would eliminate the EQAO. Thank you. I would. And we need to ensure that our curriculum prepares our kids for the jobs of tomorrow. The EQAO, that causes a lot of stress. I don't know that it achieves what we want it to achieve, benchmarking in a snapshot in time. I don't think that's necessary. There are other ways we can gauge the performance of schools and our children without stressing them out. And just two more points, if I may. Not only on the curriculum to prepare them for the jobs of tomorrow, but to repair the backlog, the $16 billion backlog of repairs and rebuilding schools. I was in Pickering last week. They tell me that their children have only ever learned in a portable, and they're converting their library to 4 classrooms because they have to. And then the one thing we haven't spoken a lot about, but I think we all agree as well, is that ratio of teacher per student and special education teacher per student as well. That is so necessary to increase the support for our students, but from our educators as well, and that is spec ed assistance as well.
Okay, so we saw a report today on de-streaming that came out.
I think we all agree.
So by show of hands, how many of you agree with the government's decision to de-stream courses in secondary?
They decided to do it, but they haven't done it.
Right. So how many of you agree in theory with that decision?
Yes.
But when you say agree with the decision can't be made in isolation from resources and support to make it effective and work.
Exactly.
Right?
That's it.
That brings me to, I think I can just leave the stage and they'll probably answer my question. So that brings me to my question. How do you promote, and ensure adequate levels of staffing in schools? Because the report, and I think I was hearing Karen Littlewood talk about it behind stage, it comes down to staffing and funding in public schools. So how do you commit to ensuring, adequate levels of staffing so these issues are faced head on?
Well, it takes money ultimately to address the fact we've got a backlog of access to special education. It takes money to implement any new change, whether it's a curriculum change, whether it's de-streaming. It takes money to make sure that there's employment dignity for education workers. It's going to take a real investment in our public education system to deliver the high quality that Ontarians deserve.
I put it in my policy on my website. I said explicitly, I will spend more money on this.
Okay. And Yasir?
Yeah, like I said, it's an investment, right? This is not spending money. This is investing in our economy, is investing in our society. As a parent, I can tell you there's nothing more important to me or any other parent in the future well-being of my children, and that comes from the education they get. So yes, de-streaming is good, but what that report also talks about, it talks about smaller class sizes. So right, more investment in our educators so that they can spend more time with those children and be able to tailor education plans according to the needs of each children. Ford government de-streamed, they took the right step, half measure, but then they're failing to invest in our educators, in our schools, so that we can actually realize the full potential of de-streaming.
So you're all talking about making it rain cash, but the question here, are, like, someone once told me there's economics in investing in services. You can't say you're investing in services when you're not making that investment catch up with inflationary pressures. And so then maybe we'll bring it back to Bonnie here. How do you ensure that there is sustainable investment, that the investment you're making is catching up with inflation?
Well, you target it such, you market to inflation. I think the Ford government announcing that they're de-streaming is half measure. They haven't implemented, they haven't created the path towards de-streaming because they haven't funded it properly. So, it's one thing to say, oh, we're going to have de-streaming by 2024, 2025, but unless they're increasing their resources to train more teachers and to reduce class sizes, then they're not really de-streaming and allowing more opportunities for all our students. If our students are trained for the jobs of tomorrow, our economy will prosper. And the Ford government isn't allocating funding where it's needed and when it's necessary to the key priorities. They're allocating it only to their own priorities, not in education and certainly not in healthcare.
Nate, Yasir, you wanted to jump in.
Well, I was just going to say, look, I mean, this is about education is not just a service. Okay. It's about building and growing an economy. I'll come back to the point that I was making earlier. Our economy is driven by our people. And we need to make sure that in this globally competitive environment where talent is the biggest commodity that people are going after, that we do everything in our power to make sure that our people are able to have the right skill sets to compete. That is for our own children, starting from kindergarten, in fact, even early learning, even before that, all the way till their post-secondary education. And it also applies to all the talented new people that we're bringing into our province and making sure that they are able to live to their full potential based on their training. That is the job of a government, that is the job of a provincial government to invest in, and that is, if we get that right, we will actually help grow our economy.
Ted?
What I wanted to say is the economy is very important, and what I think is important is increasing what economists call the productivity of our workers, how much we can make and do and the quality of it in 1 hour of work. Now, you could have people with great skill sets, but then they can be sucked away to another country, and we know that in Canada, a lot of people get moved down to the United States for opportunities. So in Canada, we have to make sure that we have investment in things like research and development and innovation, and we have to make sure that it's not happening. So in Canada, we're actually behind when it comes to productivity. We also have to have good financing for early stage companies and access to markets, as well as all of the training of our human resources.
But on that sustainable investment, how do you ensure that there is sustainable investment that keeps up with the inflationary pressures?
If your economy is not strong, if your workers are not productive, you're not going to be able to have the strong economy that can support a caring and fair society. So that's where we can get the funds. It's easy to come up with saying, oh, we should spend money on this and spend money on that. But you have to have that strong economy to pay for it.
Yeah, Nate, how does the party get this right?
Look, so tying increases to inflation is sort of the de minimis, right? Because you see the last budget and Ford touts spending money on education, but it's less than half of the rate of increase of inflation, so it ultimately is going to lead to cuts down the road. So that's the de minimis. If you want to do new things in the public education system, hire more people. If you want to deliver new services for kids, whether it's mental health, whether it's extracurriculars, and it's new dollars, then you're going to have to find a way to pay for it in a fiscally sustainable way. And ultimately, economic growth is part of the picture, and otherwise you're looking at the distribution of wealth in this province, and we should be looking at ways, whether it's financial transactions tax, we should be having a conversation about revenue tools instead of spending $1 billion a year on foregoing license plate renewal fees, right? So there's a lot we can do if we're smart about revenue. Let me just say also, though, and I'll leave you with this about education, because I think my colleagues rightly articulate that education is central to economic prosperity. Education is central to equality of opportunity. I would say, too, though, and this is where I think the Conservative Party misses the boat, that public education is, of course, central to our economy. It's also central to good citizenship. And it's really got to be a holistic look at how we improve our public education system to set our economy, but also our society up for success.
Okay, I am going to try to move on to another topic just for the sake of time. I want to talk about healthcare. At the start of the race, when I sat down with Dr. Shamji, we had a nice hour-long conversation over coffee. He told me Liberals win on healthcare. That was what he told me. I am wondering, so the pandemic exacerbated the challenges that the healthcare system in this province face. And so how do you address like the current issues that the healthcare system faces when it comes to, providing timely, equitable access, despite, the increasing strain on our hospitals and our doctors? We can start with Ted.
Okay. It's a vast topic, so let me restrict myself to maybe something that a lot of people bring up, which is they don't have a family doctor. My dad lost his family doctor this summer. I think that there are a lot of innovative ideas out there. What I really like is team-based primary care and these geographic health homes where nobody in a particular area is left out of having access to primary care. There are a lot of innovative ideas out there that are waiting to be financed by this government. It's something like 100 or so. And really, I think we need to invest some money up front, take some risks, and build new models of team-based healthcare. The Ontario Medical Association is even talking about things in their latest literature. We should be looking at artificial intelligence to do some of the paperwork and do some of the administrative things so that the humans can spend more time with their patients. It's one thing for a physician to work hard and spend a lot of time during the day doing paperwork and then feel like at the end of the day they didn't really use their training to help enough people. It's another thing to be really dead tired at the end of the day, but have helped a lot of people during the day. That kind of tired doesn't cause stress and long-term burnout.
Okay. I will let Yasir take it from here. Yasir, the same question to you. How do you address the strain on our healthcare system?
I think there's two big challenges that we need to solve for in our healthcare system. One is the health human resource challenge, right? We've got losing doctors. As a result of pandemic, retirements coming up, nurses, other healthcare workers. We need to supplement that. One of the most important ways we can do that is looking at internationally trained professionals, doctors and nurses. Over 60% of them are not able to get licensed or practice here in Ontario. It's an absolute waste. It has to stop. Something that I'm absolutely determined in changing. Provinces like Nova Scotia and Newfoundland and Labrador are doing a better job than Ontario. It's time that Ontario allows those 4,000 doctors right now here in our province who are qualified to practice medicine but not licensed, and they're driving Ubers or working in labs. So that's number one, that has to change. Number two is mental health care. Mental health care is becoming chronic. All of us need access to good mental health care. It has to be, just like primary health care, be available in a universally accessible system, in an OHIP-like system, so that every one of us can have access to mental health and addiction services. A lot of those issues uncared for are resulting in people getting physically ill, and we need to address that. And I think those are two big areas that a future Ontario Liberal government can make a real impact in ensuring the sustainability of our healthcare system.
I'll let Bonnie take this question.
Thank you. So back in 2019, when Ford cut $1,200 per capita spending for students in education, we've seen the same thing happen to our hospitals. Let's be very clear. I think we all in agreement here, single-payer universal healthcare system is what we believe in, not private medicine. They have intentionally broken the system, underfunded our hospitals and our primary care providers, and overburdened the very people we called heroes during the pandemic. So this was very intentional for them to justify opening up private clinics, and they're getting you used to going to a private clinic for your medicine, and this all is something we have to roll back. So not only the foreign trained doctors who we have to accreditate and get into the system faster, we need more domestically trained doctors as well. We need more medical schools. We need more placements for them. We need to tie multi-year service agreements to free tuition let's tie free tuition to multi-year service agreements in those more remote areas, hard to service areas. Let's also have more virtual online. Let's use technology to get diagnoses done, to get so that people have access to a doctor in remote areas through virtual visits and virtual doctors. Let's get more nurses trained in the system, and let's reduce the reliance on these nursing agencies, these agencies where nurses get burnt out of the system. They get burnt out, they leave their professions, and then they appeal to an agency. They go back to the very same hospital that wasn't funded to begin with. They're spending needlessly on overtime and paying agencies. They get paid twice as much to work half as much. So these are some of the things we need to address. But I agree with Ted on the primary care providers. There's 2.2 million of us that don't have a primary care doctor. We need more primary care physicians, and I like that team approach. Adol proposed it first. It's a team approach. Reduce the admin burden on them, and it could be in some areas registered nursing practitioners, but paid by OHIP, not privately paid. Private.
Let me jump in there. Paid by OHIP and not privately paid. And I'm going to follow up here. You talked about privatization of healthcare and how the government is getting us used to that.
Like the frog in the pot.
So let me play devil's advocate here and be the Ford government. It's innovation. People are paying. No, people are not paying. It's OHIP that's paying for these services, but it's private. Private delivery. It's innovation. What do you say to that?
I had a group of 12 doctors come to me and they said, Mayor, we need a support letter because we're going to open up a private clinic across the street from the hospital and do the surgeries that the hospital can't accommodate. And I said, really, is that interesting? We've raised $30 million. We're so excited. Can we get a letter of support for the bank? And I said, just a minute. How are you going to give a premium to your investors? How will you pay them back? Oh, we'll be more streamlined than the hospital will be, they told me. I said, really? So I can go in and use my OHIP card? Well, the Ontario government, of course, will pay for a basic service. If somebody wants more or needs more treatment or has to stay overnight, then there might be a further payment. Hang on, let me a sec. I said, so the 12 of you will still be working at the hospitals, won't you? And they said, oh, yes. 1 day a week. And I said, what about nurses? We need more nurses. Oh yes, we picked the best and the bright ones out of the hospitals. We're taking them too. How does that work? I said, I can't give you a support letter. You're taking the best doctors and nurses out of the system. You're providing a private clinic. What about the rest of us? We want access to a single payer system. We want the Ontario government to pay for our health care, make it fair and accessible for everyone, not just people who can come in with a credit card.
Nate. I'm gonna ask audience to keep the clapping 10 minimum because we do have time, not a lot of time, and I have a lot of questions. Nate, innovation or not innovation?
Well, first let me answer the healthcare question in general in terms of priorities. And on the priorities, I agree, family health teams, I agree, treat mental health as health. We have to add, though, making sure that home and community care is prioritized and we deliver for seniors in this province. We have a massively aging population, and we right now have a provincial government that brags about the large institutional care beds that they are opening, and we are underinvesting in home and community care and allowing and supporting seniors to age with dignity. We also need preventative health care and a focus on the social determinants of health. Housing, making sure we're addressing housing and income security in a serious way will have knock-on positive consequences in our healthcare system if we get it right. Now, on innovation, you've got the Premier who stands there and says, the status quo is broken, and people feel it if they're waiting a long time in an ER. They feel it if they don't have access to a family doctor. And then he immediately moves to privatization. Now, you've got a situation where, yeah, we should probably move non-acute surgeries, knee and hip, out of acute care settings, but they should be nonprofit community clinics that are integrated with the hospital system. And I'll leave you with this. The chair of the Innovation in Healthcare Report federally, Dr. David Naylor, he says the #1 challenge is a lack of integration in our healthcare system. And what has Ford done? He's made that lack of integration even worse with privatization.
Okay. I'm going to move on to another topic, I want to talk about housing. One quick question. There's a lot to talk about when it comes to the Greenbelt MZOs. How do you build housing, and maybe more so, do the means justify the ends?
Never. Sorry.
Let Ted start with this question.
If the question is how to build housing, I would say integrate it with an overall policy for land use. And I keep saying, I want to preserve prime agricultural land. And to do that, I want to stop urban sprawl. And to do that, I want to build medium density in our cities with even more density around transit hubs, and to build transportation to make housing more effective. So it all fits together. And I think it's important to make sure that we change the rules so that it becomes easier to build, it makes it legal to build more density. And that's, I think, the way forward. We cannot keep sprawling and spreading out and relying on vehicles to travel, single passenger vehicles to travel long distances every day.
Yasir, do the means justify the ends?
So we of course we need to build housing. We as a province, we are growing, and we have to plan for that. But we don't build that on protected green space like the green belt. We don't build that on our prime agriculture land and take away that, because once you take that away, you can never renew it. You do so by working with our partners, with our municipalities, big and small and medium-sized communities. Where I have a huge issue with Doug Ford and his government is that he took the lazy route out, and a route that actually benefited some of his friends by unlocking the green belt, as opposed to working with municipalities and looking at how do we grow those communities, like Peterborough and Sarnia and Cornwall and Belleville and Bradford and you know the list goes on. Every mayor that I've met in those communities wants their fair share of new people in their community, but they also want an opportunity to actually grow those communities. That's where the provincial government can play a very important role. Connectivity is a big part of it. Good public transit that connects our cities, especially with large urban centers, making sure that we have good roads where public transit is not a viable option, making sure that we've got good broadband, good internet available so that our professional class can work virtually from smaller parts of the province as well. We need to look at growing all parts of Ontario, not just big, large urban centers.
A Conservative, after the Auditor General's report, texted me and was like, at the start of the day, I thought this was going to be the end. At the end of the day, I don't think that folks are going to remember this by Christmas. So do people, like, and I'm playing devil's advocate here. Do people really care about the means if the end is that more housing is built?
Well, if RCMP is hauling people in handcuffs, yeah, they'll care.
But if people don't get the housing they can afford, then they'll see that it's not working. And that's, if opening up the Greenbelt, it wasn't to build a whole bunch of affordable housing within an easy walk to a workplace. We weren't building that kind of housing. So people will still see that this government is not building the housing they need, and they feel that's the #1 concern.
And just very quick, and they wasted an entire year since coming back into government. They said that this was the #1 priority. They ran on getting it done, and they spent last 7-8 weeks getting it undone. I mean, and the problem has even become more acute. That's a failure on part of Doug Ford.
So the ends don't justify the means, but let's pull these ideas apart, right? So I think there actually was a worrying level of support for building on the Greenbelt because of the real housing crisis that is out there, especially among young people. Now, the corruption undid it all, okay? And that's a line in the sand, and Doug Ford is going to continue to wear this scandal as we go on, because integrity is everything in the end of the day. Trust is everything in politics, and there's an entire absence of integrity at Queen's Park and in the Premier's office. Now, to protect the Greenbelt, to actually protect our green space, but also to get housing built, we do need to make sure we do 3 things. It is about making sure we remove all barriers to smart and sustainable growth. The task force that Ford put in place had a bunch of recommendations that he promptly ignored, but it's build gentle density everywhere, greater density near transit. We need provincial governments and working with other levels to get back in the game on non-market housing. You've got Go area lands, Metrolinx owned lands, and not a single affordable unit is being built with those lands when they sell it off into private hands. That's got to change. Metrolinx has to be integrated with a housing strategy to build non-market, affordable rental housing, co-op housing, workforce housing, and more. And lastly, we should be treating housing as a home first and investment second. A stronger rent controls, a beneficial ownership registry, and when dollars come in, we want to attract investment, but it's got to be building supply and adding density. It can't be that dollars are coming in just to compete with first-time home buyers.
Okay, Bonnie?
So I spend a lot of time thinking about this because this is actually my day job. Spend every Monday night in planning meetings. The end never justifies the means. And what we saw was just pure corruption. And it's interconnected with a whole lot of other things. First of all, it's an encroachment into municipal planning and zoning, which I resent as a mayor, and I'm going to get to what the mayors think in a second. But the Greenbelt, opening it up, we should put it in a food and water trust so that it's away from political interference, and we preserve all our sensitive land, our Greenbelt, and our agricultural land as well. So it's connected to the MZOs, it's connected to the 413, and later we'll see the level of corruption that will exist on Ontario places. The Auditor General is now studying that. But the mayors, and I was chair of the big city mayors until I entered this race, we have all told the Premier, you don't need to open the Greenbelt to build the housing. We can all accommodate the growth numbers within our municipal boundaries. That's the other thing I forgot. Wait till you look at who purchased the land outside the municipal boundaries. And it makes sense. We have the infrastructure, we have the public transit, and we are where the jobs are. So we all have to embrace a little more density, and that's where the key is. But I see a role for 3 levels of government to come together and to work together with our partners in home building. Yes, they've been vilified lately, but there are good ones. There are a few bad apples in every sector, but for the most part, I've worked with them. They have been partners in Mississauga. We need them to come together. The federal government has a role in accelerating housing, and they used to build. They used to build co-ops. It was wonderful. The provincial government has a role in building affordable and deeply affordable, and the municipal government has an opportunity to clear the backlogs and get the permits rolling, and we work with the home building industry, and this is vitally important.
Okay. I am going to move on to another segment because of time, and this is more of a rapid-fire segment in which I do want the candidates to be short and sweet with their answers. There will be some yes or no questions as well, so if they go beyond yes or no, you know that they broke the rule. So the first question, the cost of living has skyrocketed in this province, and if there is one thing that is consistent between the 4 of them, is that you have yet to release a policy on taxes. And so, under your government, will there be an increase in taxes? Are you open to considering that? Yes or no? Yasir?
I haven't looked at the book, so I can't answer that question right now.
Ted?
It has to be a costed platform. Then we'll know what we need to do.
But in theory, would you be open to it?
It's on the table.
Okay. Nate?
Yes, but the distribution matters. I'm not interested in taxing low and middle income families.
Bonnie?
Yeah, I think it will depend on the platform and the funding of our priorities, including education, healthcare, home building.
Are you supportive of keeping the 95-year lease contract with Therme at Ontario Place?
No.
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 No. Okay. That was easy. As leader of the Ontario Liberal Party, are you...
Public land. They're a private foreign company.
As leader of the Ontario Liberal Party, would you be committed to gender parity in your roster of candidates? Bonnie?
Yes.
Nate?
And diverse, too.
So substantively, yes, but I also want competitive open nominations. So this idea of gaming nominations, I think was a problem in the last round. And I've seen how it was used, where we excluded certain people after the fact, after they've been running for a long time. So I think we have to be fair and open and have competitive nominations at the same time.
I'm going to break my own rule, and I'm going to follow up here. There was a policy, the 30 under 30, in which there were 30 candidates under the age of 30 running across the province. Are these the types of policies that we wouldn't see under your leadership?
You're not going to see 30 under 30, no. Now, look, I'll be honest, I don't think 50-50 is some magic. If it's 52% women, great. If it's 55% women, great. If it's 48% women, that works too. I genuinely think we've got to make sure that we have grassroots local representation. I'm going to work relentlessly to make sure that it's as diverse a slate as we've ever seen, but we need grassroots competition.
Ted, gender parity?
I believe in open nominations, and the way we did it in the federal election leading up to 2015 is to recruit early. spend a lot of time thinking and learning about the different communities and asking who could run. And it, it could be between whatever, 45, 55%. It doesn't have to be precisely 50-50.
Yes, sir.
Getting more women in politics is really important. Gender parity is part of my party renewal platform.
Okay. We did enough politics, so I'm going to try to move away from the politics. Favorite Canadian musician? Bonnie.
I got a lot of them, actually, because I love music. I'm actually a huge music fan. I'm great friends with the folks at Triumph because they're Mississauga-based, and Gilmore, of course, owns Metalworks. So I will say Gilmore, Tom Cochrane. These are all people I know, and I think they're excellent musicians.
Drake is the only answer I'm accepting. Nate.
Look, I'm a little older than you are, and I respect both kinds of music, rock and roll.
Yeah. Fair enough. Nate?
I should probably say the Beaches because I represent Beaches East York, but I grew up, my sister actually, my older sister was really into Sloan growing up, and I listened to them quite a lot growing up, so I'd probably say Sloan.
Ted?
Rob Baker of the Tragically Hip is one of my campaign co-chairs, and we love the Tragically Hip in Kingston. What is, I think, is special about them is they're really connected to the land, to where they came from. I'll throw in somebody completely different because when I was younger, I played the piano, so a big fan of Glenn Gould and his playing.
See, you
Also
know who
Beaches
he is?
East York.
Okay.
Mr. Nackman?
Non-Drake.
So my colleagues learned at another event the other day that I'm a big fan of Blue Rodeo, and Jim Cuddy is really, really a favorite artist of mine. The artist that I'm really enjoying nowadays is from actually Manitoba. His name is William Prince. He's of Indigenous background. Hear him out, amazing voice.
But can I tell you, so I picked on my sister, so the concert that my parents took me to was Bob Dylan and Joni Mitchell at Maple Leaf Gardens, and I will say that still stands out as the best concert I've been to, so you can't go wrong with Joni Mitchell.
If you were to write your own
You too, for me.
if you were to write your own memoir, what would the title of the book be? Yes, sir?
I've thought about that. Challenging the status quo.
Okay. Ted?
I have not thought about that.
Okay.
Why don't I say True Grit?
Okay.
I like that.
Nate?
I honestly am so far away from writing a memoir. When you've got, outside of politics, I've got a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old, so it's barely surviving probably is where I'm at right now.
That works. Bonnie?
Oh gosh, I've never thought about this at all. Writing a memoir. Who would read that? God. Polish immigrant girl does good. Jeez. Don't even start with blonde ambition. I don't know, looking at me like, I don't know. I'd have to give that more thought.
Would you restore the Child Advocate and French Language Services Commissioner that was cut by the Ford government at the start of the Premier's term?
Yes.
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 Yes, okay.
French language and environment commissioner, ombudsman. I think there are a number of things we've all agreed to bring back.
Okay. Do you support electoral reform? And if you do, which system do you personally favor? Yasir?
So I've supported, so in 2007 when there was a referendum on that, mixed member proportional system was suggested and I supported, it was my first election actually I contested in and I publicly supported that and I still prefer that as a better system than first past the post or proportional representation, which are the two extremes.
Ted?
So I voted in the House of Commons for a motion on mixed member proportional, so I support that. I also worked on the yes side of the ranked ballot referendum in Kingston. My favorite system when it comes to electing a legislature is a regional top-up proportional system because I believe that people should be connected to a region and know which voters they're responsible to and not the party leadership.
Nate?
2015 will be the last election under first. No, too soon. No, so I was one of two liberals in the House to vote for electoral reform, and I wrote an op-ed apologizing for that broken promise. Electoral reform has mattered to me before getting into politics, and we've committed to delivering reform, starting with a citizens' assembly. Personally, I favor single transferable vote. Mixed member proportional representation would be great too, but it shouldn't really matter. What I want to see reform through, and we've got to bring people back to this conversation to have a more serious conversation and advance it and not see what we saw at the federal level.
Bonnie.
Okay, two things. I was thinking about Canadian bands. Maybe some of you have heard about Bachman-Turner Overdrive. So maybe Taking Care of Business as an autobiography, but no one's going to read it. And with respect to electoral reform, yes, I've agreed to a citizens' assembly so that they can make those decisions and take the politics out of it.
Okay. Bring back the universal basic income proposal. This is a yes or no question.
Yes.
Nate?
Yeah.
You use the word proposal, you mean the pilot.
The pilot, yes.
Pilot, yeah.
And yes or?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Worked on it.
What is one thing that you personally agree with Premier Doug Ford on? Bonnie.
Retail-style politics. You know, just that personal touch with people. I think he does that very well. You know, I think he's very personable. He'll know your name and your spouse's name and your kids' names, your pets' names, and ask you how you're doing. And you will feel like in that moment you have made a connection with him. He's a very good retail politician.
Is that a challenge for the next leader? His retail-style politics?
It is, and I'll give you an example of that. 2 weeks ago, I was representing the Liberal Party at the Ontario Mining Association reception, and Doug Ford shows up. So he's working the room, and I'm working the room. He's very good. At that, yep. And it is something that we have to compete with him. The guy you see in the legislature who lets Paul Calandra answer all his questions for him, that's not the guy we have to. We have to beat the guy who stands in a room of miners and charms them, and he's got them all, following him around the room. We have to be prepared to beat that guy. Now, we're not going to, it doesn't mean we're going to win in the room of miners, but everywhere in the province.
But we're not going to do that by talking like him and acting like him. That's authentic to him. It may not be authentic to us. We're going to do that by electing a leader who's relatable to people, who have the same lived experiences with people, and not come from his privileged background and pretends that somehow, by calling people friends and folks, he's one of them.
Okay. Next question.
Wait, one thing.
Did you not go? Okay.
No, one thing that we agree with Doug Ford.
Okay, yep.
Yeah, I mean, retail, sure. We're in politics. We should be able to connect with people, I would hope. But I actually think, I come from, my parents were teachers. It was a union household. And Doug Ford's done a very poor job of connecting with public sector unions, but a very good job of engaging with private sector unions, especially in the skilled trades. Okay. So I think the next Liberal leader has to rebuild those relationships, and we cannot allow another election cycle go through where Doug Ford is the one who's engaging and getting things done and building. We have to engage and be as focused on the skilled trades and the building trades as he is.
Ted?
I think that I would double up on what the Ford government has been doing in funding the skills training, but I think that is a positive aspect. I think there are other things that they could be doing. And then I'll also say, I have a weak spot for junk food, so I'll share that with Doug Ford.
Okay.
I don't know that he eats junk food.
Well, he talks about ice cream and...
I've had dinner with him. He doesn't eat beef. He eats chicken and pasta.
Okay. I mean, if the Premier would like to come and do an interview with me, the offer is open. I would love to ask him. Yasir.
So I think I answered this question not that long ago on a podcast, and some of the modernization they've done around employment laws, Employment Standards Act, I think good. The most recent legislation they announced around banning Canadian experience, I applaud them for doing that.
Okay, last question in this round. Are you committed to running for the party regardless of whether you win on December 2nd or not? Yasir.
Yes.
Ted.
Yes.
Nate.
It depends.
On?
So I mentioned Mary Margaret McMahon in Beaches East York. I care a lot about strong local representation. So if I'm not going to be that strong local advocate in my own community, it's really going to depend upon the role that I'm able to play to make the biggest difference that I can. I said at the outset, I'm here to make the biggest difference. Okay. And I'm sure any one of the leaders on stage would provide that role. I just don't know what that role would be.
Bonnie?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right. We're going to move to the next portion, candidates' questions. So before the event, we asked each candidate to basically prepare a question of another candidate. I will note, there are 4 candidates on stage. You have an assortment to choose from, so there is no obligation to choose one specific person, and this goes to all 4 of you. Yasir, you can start us off.
Great. Well, so I was going to ask Ted a question, because I think Ted has done a lot of good work in developing his policy ideas, and he's been quite engaging in talking about some key policies, especially economic policy. Ted, one of the areas that I've been talking about that's necessary is around fighting climate change, is to harness the economic opportunity of fighting climate change in terms of creating good paying jobs. In your view, where we have failed and what direction as a province we need to go to really not only combat climate change, but actually create good paying jobs for Ontarians?
Where the Ford government has failed is in delaying and going backwards on developing renewable energy, conservation. They paid money to dismantle renewable energy projects. They stopped conservation programs. They didn't get started on energy storage. And now we've gone through the pandemic and we're experiencing inflation, and heavy equipment costs a lot more. It's very, very high inflation on heavy equipment. And now we're also in line behind the United States, which has this thing called the Inflation Reduction Act, where they're purchasing all sorts of upgrades to their electricity infrastructure, their renewable energy systems, and they're even hiring away Canadian professionals who work in energy. So we are facing high inflation and in the back of the line behind the United States because of the Ford government's delays.
Bonnie, your question?
Well, I was going to ask Ted, but since he just answered a question, I'll ask Nate. Nate, you've spent a lot of time talking about climate change. How can we ensure that the Liberal Party embraces the policies you or any of us have put forward and makes them a priority? Not the policies themselves, but how do we make them a priority in the next election?
So I think it's really about how we connect with people, not just on protecting the planet for our kids. So for me, I have a 7-year-old, 3-year-old, I care about protecting the planet for our kids. That takes us a certain distance. We also need to make sure that we articulate it as attracting investment and creating good jobs. That's going to take us another distance to deliver the ambition that we need. And lastly, we have to bring it back to affordability. This has been a huge challenge at times in federal politics because we don't bring it back to affordability. But if we're talking about heat pumps replacing propane in a northern community, then it is about affordability at the same time as it's about creating jobs, at the same time as about reducing emissions and doing right by our kids.
Okay. Nate, your question.
I'll ask a question back to Mayor Crombie, and it's, you've heard me say repeatedly that we need to earn the trust of progressive voters. Now, I'm not going to run down the list of, you said this and then you've said something where you've corrected the record, but what is your path to earning the trust of progressive voters?
Well, I have earned the trust of my voters at home, and I know I will be able to earn the trust of Ontarians. I think it's so important. As I mentioned, I've increased my popular support throughout each election. In the last election, 78% of all people who voted supported me, and I'm very honored. And I think it's a question of being on the ground in each riding and selling our brand and talking to people and listening to them. I think listening is the most important thing. They want to be heard, and they want to be reflected in our policy platform, what their needs are. It's been a long time since we've spoken to farmers and agricultural communities. It's a long time since we've spoken to the Francophone community or the Northern community. We have to speak to them about their priorities and show up. If there's one thing I heard, they feel neglected and they feel isolated, and I promised them, I asked them, in fact, how they voted since they felt so isolated and neglected, and of course they told me what I didn't want to hear, which was conservative, and I said, so what's your MPP done for you lately? I'm sorry, it's kind of my...
Not conservative voters, progressive voters.
So what's your MPP done for you lately? Have they brought in investment? Have they built a new waste treatment plant? This is the nuts and bones of how you get elected. You deliver for people based on what their needs are. And the Conservatives haven't been doing that in ridings right across this province. And if we show up and if we listen to people and we address their concerns, we will get elected.
Ted, you can take the next question.
In the next election, we need the whole party, everybody, to be out there working hard, trying to win every seat that we can in the 2026 election. One of the most depressing things I heard going around the province during this leadership is people who were interested in a nomination and did months of work and then got an email saying, sorry, you can't run. And others who were ready to run and didn't get nominated until very, very late for some reason that wasn't clear, and then unable to run a full campaign. So my question, and anybody can answer this, is, and I think everybody should answer it, will you commit to fair, open, and civil nominations?
Yes. Were you asking me? I don't know, but yes.
I'll ask Yasir.
Yeah, the answer is yes. I'm actually sitting
Everybody
here.
can answer.
I'm actually
It's
sitting
really
here
important.
because when I ran for the very first time, there was a fair, open, a very competitive nomination. And I was not, by the way, the candidate the party wanted. I was not the person. They wanted somebody else. But I said to them, have an open and fair nomination. And if I'm half as good as I say I am, I'll win this thing, right? And we hustled, and we worked hard, and we sold memberships. And I was able to win the nomination. Remember, my riding was just north of then Premier's riding. So there was a lot at stake there, and we surprised them, but we did that. And if it not for that open and competitive process, perhaps I would have not been in elected politics. So to me, that's how you win election. And by the way, that election, I only won by 1,200 votes. And I'm convinced we won because we had done the hard work and we created the excitement and the buzz in the riding that resulted in people voting for the Liberal Party and for myself.
I'm going to do the final segment of this event. I've spent the past few months talking to Liberals and hearing what they have to say about each of you. And I'm here as a messenger. I'm going to relay some criticisms that I've heard of each of you, and I'm going to provide you with an opportunity.
Therapeutic, by the way.
I'm going to provide you with an opportunity for you to address this. So this is one question per candidate. It's not supposed to be, you're jumping in and ganging up here. I'm going to start with Yasir. Yasir, fighting the status quo is your motto. It's your slogan. But Liberals say that you are the status quo. You were an Attorney General under, Kathleen Wynne government. You were the Minister of Labour. You were government House Leader pushing through the policies of that government that was voted out, largely because they were unpopular. So to those who say that you were the status quo, what do you say to them?
Well, I'm an immigrant kid who came at age 15 with no support structure, with a family that has worked really hard, extremely hard, to build our lives here. I've never been part of establishment. I've always been an outsider. I have to work 3 times harder than anybody else to earn my spot at the table. I served 6 years as a backbencher before I earned a spot at the cabinet table. And by working very hard to do so. And I still continue to do so. Even in this race, establishment is now with me, right? And I'm working very hard to win this leadership. That's how I have challenged the status quo, and because of that hard work, I've been being successful in my personal life, in my professional life, and in my political life.
Ted Chu, you are the nice guy in this race, as they say. I wrote a story on you, and I said the same thing. People call you the nice guy, but Liberals I talk to say that the nice guy can't necessarily beat Doug Ford in a general election. You are a a new rookie MPP. You served federally, you served Kingston federally, but is that enough for you to lead the party and govern the province?
One thing that I've used to be able to win is the ability to attract voters from across the political spectrum to vote for me. And I'm seen as somebody who's not particularly ideological or partisan, and therefore approachable. I think a lot of people are sick and tired of partisanship, and I think it's much worse in the House of Commons than it is in our legislature, but they're sick and tired of politicians taking cheap shots at each other, and they want them to get together and fix their problems. And they don't even want to wait until the next election. They want to see politicians working together now to make things better. And so I make no apologies for being nice, because I think that's a way to get people to work together who might not otherwise get to work together. I think that I can use that ability to reach out to people with different persuasions, different opinions, to steal votes away from the other parties, to build consensus coalition that will win the next election. And sure, I can stand up to Doug Ford and I can work the room at the Ontario Mining Association like at the same time as he's doing. But it's not just about taking shots and entertaining the country or the province by taking cheap shots at your opponent. It's about convincing and earning trust of as many people as possible, many of whom are not going to be Liberal Party members or initially Liberal Party supporters. But you've got to be able to reach out. And I think being nice that's what it is. That's what it means.
Nate, you are the anti-establishment opposition, is how folks put it. You were viewed as the maverick on Parliament Hill, the one voice who is not afraid of speaking up against or voting, not towing the party line. But then Liberals say, or some Liberals will argue that that's not the type of person that should be leading the party. You haven't had a seat at the table when it comes to cabinet or when it comes to even being a parliamentary secretary at the federal level. So what do you say to those people who say that you are, the anti-establishment opposition candidate here?
So I'd say two things. One, it's a little overstated insofar as when you look at the ability to influence the government's agenda, we have stronger climate action because of legislation that I've introduced. Tens of thousands of low-income workers are out of poverty because of advocacy that I started in 2016 to strengthen what is now called the Canada Workers Benefit. We have legislation, government legislation, to better treat substance use as a health issue. That's legislation that I drafted. I could run down a longer list, but it's by working across party lines, of course, but working within my caucus to get things done. And you don't do that if you're so anti-establishment all the time. I've been chair of our 4 and 6 caucus. I've had leadership roles on behalf of caucus in a serious way. The second thing I will say, though, is I don't think the general public is so very partisan in a way that we tend to be as members of political parties. And integrity really matters. And the ability to point to a track record of telling it like it is and conducting myself with integrity, we've attracted people from across the political spectrum to our team in the course of this race, and we're going to continue to attract a team across the political spectrum as leader. And I'll tell you this last final thing about team building. Are you going to get serious people give up their pay, privacy, and their family to join politics if they don't get to keep their own voice? No, we want people to join our politics who are going to put their communities before our party. That's how we are going to rebuild our party in a serious way. And I can point to 8 years of experience in federal politics where I've been a strong voice for my community, and I'm going to encourage the same of any caucus that I lead.
Bonnie Crombie, the Liberals I've spoken with say that you're not necessarily, the best available options when it comes to being ambitious on policy, that your policies may represent that status quo that we were talking with, I was telling Yasir about. So some will argue that Bonnie Crombie is more of the same, and they'll cite, your record on housing in Mississauga and blocking thousands of houses from being built in Mississauga. I wonder what you say to those people, that Bonnie Crombie is more of the same, that she is just another version of Doug Ford, but a Liberal.
Well, that's very interesting. I think I have some of the most complete, comprehensive policy been developed that's been, especially my housing policy, which has been rated by some of the experts as the most comprehensive and the best that's out there. I will always surround myself with the best people and listen and take advice. I don't presume to be an expert on all things, but I tell you what, city building is something I'm pretty good at, in building neighborhoods, and I'm pretty proud of the work that I have done as mayor for just about a decade, and a councillor before that, and then advocating for my community as a member of parliament and being a business person for 20 years as well is something I've done. Change is never easy. Even in a city like Mississauga, that we were farmland and fruit trees 40 years ago, and now we are a dynamic, diverse, modern city, and inclusive and welcoming, and I am so proud of our record that we have assigned density, unlimited heights and density in our downtown. We are building beautiful waterfront communities, and we've now proven that that we have accepted and embraced gentle density as well throughout our neighborhoods. So I'm satisfied the direction we're going. We're building and investing in public transit, including light rail in Mississauga. And we are not the city that we were even a decade ago. We were a sleepy suburb, and we are a very modern, diverse, inclusive city today. And I'm constantly looking for investment to bring in, to create prosperity and bring jobs. So that's the approach I take, and that's the approach that I will always take. I listen to experts and I execute, and I'm pretty good at closing a deal. Thank you.
And the closing question here in one sentence or less, no, one sentence, that's it. As leader of the Ontario Liberal Party, what will your first order of business be on December 3rd? Let's begin with Ted. One sentence.
Start to rebuild the party by taking all the individual members that we have as a result of this leadership contest and turning them into communities in each.
Yeah,
riding.
my English teacher taught me not to do run-on sentences, so I'm going to ask you not to do run-on sentences here. Yes, sir.
I'm going to sit down with all these folks right away.
Okay.
So that we can develop a plan together to build our party and defeat Doug Ford in 2026.
Okay. Nate?
Yeah, sit down with everyone on stage, but also call every riding president, every volunteer on campaigns, and really start to rebuild this together in a serious way.
Repeal Bill 124 and hit the ground running.
Okay. Well, that is it for tonight's conversation. Thank you very much to the four candidates for joining us, Bonnie Crombie, Nate Erskine-Smith, Ted Hsu, and Yasir Naqvi. Thank you for being here. Thank you to our partners with the 3 teachers' unions. Voting is on November 25th and 26th. Leadership results will be announced on December 2nd at the Metro Toronto Convention Centre. There's one ask I have, and I ask this of every party leadership race, every person in this province: please vote. It is a privilege to vote in this country, so please use your right. Just a quick thing, subscribe to the newsletter. Polly Corner covers Queen's Park daily. You can subscribe at nbpolycorner.ca. You can subscribe at nbpolycorner.ca. Thank you very much for joining us. Have a great evening. Thank you for doing that.